Hey y'all, my name is Gregory Agid, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between jazz and classical music. Welcome back to another lesson video. My name is Gregory Agid. Today we're going to do something just a little bit different. I'm going to try and create this free-flowing stream of consciousness type video, and today I wanted to discuss my experience and my opinion about the difference between being a jazz musician and being a classical musician. And I feel like I'm a little qualified to speak on this topic because I am extensively trained as a jazz musician, and I spent 4 years at Loyola University here in New Orleans getting a classical clarinet degree. So I wanted to speak about the differences in musical training and the function of being a jazz musician versus what it's like being a classical musician. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you're returning, welcome back. Please give me a like and don't forget to leave a comment. Y'all, I hope this video is a little controversial. If you agree with something I say, let me know what you agree with. And if you disagree with something I'm saying, please let me know why you disagree. This has been on my mind because recently I have had the privilege of working with a lot of classical clarinet players who want to learn more about jazz and improvisation. So for those of you who do play clarinet, there's a good chance that you're coming to the clarinet from a classical perspective. There's a good chance that you learned clarinet in band, the orchestra, symphonic band, wind ensemble, even classical quartets and small ensembles, chamber groups and such. So for the most part, a lot of clarinet players have a foundational training in classical music, and later on in life, they decide to study jazz and other styles of music. I have a little different of a background. When I was in 5th grade, I started playing clarinet in my elementary school band. And when I was 12 years old, I moved to New Orleans, Louisiana. When I moved to New Orleans, I started participating in an organization called the Louis Armstrong Jazz Camp. And from that point, that's when a lot of my real training as a clarinet player began. And most of that training was happening through the jazz idiom. I had the great privilege of studying with one of the most fantastic musicians ever, an incredible clarinet player, composer, educator, a gentleman by the name of Alvin Baptiste. And if you're not familiar with him, please go check him out. He's a true genius and one of the most important clarinet players in my life, but also an incredibly influential figure to the current world of jazz. You know, some of his students include John Baptiste, Wynton Marsalis, Branford Marsalis, Terrence Blanchard, Randy Jackson, and the list, like, honestly goes on and on. When I graduated from high school, Alvin Baptiste told me to go study classical clarinet. So I attended Loyola University, where I pretty much dedicated myself to study the classical idiom for about 4 years. So I'm saying all of this just to let you all know that I've spent extensive time in the jazz world and some time in the classical world. Also, I just want to say too, I'm not the biggest fan of these different genres of music: jazz, classical, R&B, rock, funk, soul. I was never really brought up with genres being enforced on me as a young musician. And honestly, I believe that there's truly only 2 genres of music, and that's good music and bad music. So there's no such thing as an easy style of music or a more difficult style of music. If you truly want to be a master of performing anything at the highest level, it's going to be extremely challenging. So every style of music that you play, you're going to develop a different skill set. And to master those skills requires a lot of focus, energy, and dedication. And just because you are a master of one style of music doesn't mean you can just transfer those skills to another style. For example, if you're a classical musician, going and playing funk music is going to be maybe a little challenging for you because you have developed a different skill set studying classical music. And the same thing for a funk musician. If you've played funk your whole life, stepping into the classical world is going to be challenging, not because one style of music is easier than the other, but because you've developed a different skill set that might not necessarily be applicable to the other style. And, you know, as another asterisk here, maybe the skill set that you developed in a different genre of music will help improve your interpretation of this other style. Remember, the only thing that truly matters is good music or bad music. We always want to be creating good music regardless of the genre. I get frustrated when I hear people refer to classical music as legit. And when I hear that, I sarcastically think in my mind, like, okay, cool. Like, if you are playing legit music, then am I playing illegitimate music? Or also when people say, hey, it's good enough for jazz. Y'all, that's ridiculous. That's some of the, I don't know. I don't want to curse here on YouTube, but I just feel like it's not the most intelligent thing to say. So once again, I'm going to go back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. There are only two styles of music. There's good music and there's bad music. And the good enough for jazz, that doesn't mean anything. I believe that no matter what style of music you're playing, you should always aspire to play it at the highest level. And there's no genre of music that is truly superior to another. Again, if you're going to be performing anything, it should be performed at the highest level. And ultimately, the difference between these genres is the skill set that you're developing. So let's dig into the difference between being a jazz musician and being a classical musician. And I think the main difference can be summed up in this short little phrase. Being a jazz musician, your study and you're more focused on the what and the why of music. If you are a classical musician, you're more focused on the how. So let me elaborate. As a jazz musician, we need to learn what to play and why we play it, right? Jazz is an improvised art form, and improvisation is the art of spontaneous composition. So every jazz musician, in essence, is a composer. So when you're learning how to improvise, you're essentially learning how to compose. So composers have a deep understanding of the history of music, music theory, music composition. We understand, once again, the why. Why are we doing this? Why did we come to this conclusion? Why am I playing this note? Why am I playing this harmony? Why is the form this way? So as jazz musicians, we're essentially learning how to be composers. And once again, we're improvisers. We're spontaneous composers. We are creating compositions in the moment. And once again, the difference between a composer and an improviser is that a composer has the luxury of making edits, while an improviser does not have the ability to edit the improvised solo. Improvisation is happening in the moment, while composition can happen over a long period of time. As jazz musicians, we need to learn about music theory. What is a C7? What is a C major 7? What is a C major 7 sharp 5? What is a C minor 7 flat 5? What scales correlate to those chords? Ultimately, it's the understanding of chord scale harmony and having a deep understanding of how our ears function, connecting our ears to our instrument, right? If you can hear it, you can sing it. If you can sing it, you can play it. And jazz musicians are ultimately hearing music and playing it. The art of spontaneous composition. The same exact thing Mozart's doing, the same thing Beethoven's doing, except it's happening in the moment. As a jazz musician, you need to be prepared for the unknown. So a lot of the practice that jazz musicians do, we may be taking things in different keys, learning how to maneuver in our instrument so that we can connect our ear to the instrument, right? We develop our ear so that we can hear things to play, and then we develop our facility on the instrument so that we can play the things that we hear. As jazz musicians, we're always preparing for the unknown. What do I do when the drummer plays this? What do I play when the piano player plays that? And so, in a sense, the training of a jazz musician is really focused on what do I play and why do I play it? In the jazz idiom, there's a larger spectrum of accepted techniques on the instrument, because the technique that you possess on the instrument is determined by what you play and why you're playing it. For example, someone like Johnny Hodges or John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Ornette Coleman, Michael Brecker, Ben Webster, all of these people are going to have different ways of playing the saxophone because they have a different what do I play and a different why do I play it. And because their language and approach to the music is different, their technique on the instrument is a little bit different. So there's a larger spectrum of what is acceptable in terms of instrumental technique in the jazz idiom. Each musician has a different musical concept. Therefore, each musician is going to develop different instrumental techniques. Hey, so I'm here at my house editing the video, and as I'm watching this, I just wanted to add one little thing. So the ultimate goal of every jazz musician is to have a unique voice and a unique sound. And so we strive to be able to play one note and be instantly recognizable. So if I hear Stan Getz play one note on the saxophone, I can identify, hey, that's Stan Getz. If I hear Ben Webster or John Coltrane, their sound on the saxophone is instantly recognizable. Also, their vocabulary and approach to the instrument is instantly recognizable. So I just want to say that the goal of every jazz musician is to have a unique voice, a unique approach to the music, a unique vocabulary, and ultimately find your own voice, your own individuality when creating and interpreting this music. All right, back to the video. So how does being a classical musician differ from being a jazz musician? And in my opinion, classical training and being a classical musician is different because you're more focused on the how of music. How do I perform music that has already been composed for me? And how do I execute it at the highest level? And how do I bring it to life through my humanity and musical experience? One of the key differences here is that the majority of classical instrumentalists are going to be performing music that has already been composed by someone else, right? The composer themselves have gone through the process of what do I play and why do I play it? Very similar to that of the jazz musician. So the composer themselves have gone through that process, while the classical instrumentalist is going through the process of how do I perform this music at the highest level and how do I bring it to life? Because classical musicians are focused on the how of music, the training is going to be very different than that of a jazz musician. Classical musicians will study a set pedagogy of one's instrumental technique. There are set scales, there are set etudes, there are set pieces to learn. There's a set repertoire that everyone studies. And our job, once again, is to gain as much knowledge and mastery of our instrument so that when we have to play someone else's music, we are able to execute that at the highest level and once again, bring it to life. When I was studying classical music, I was actually shocked at how much time I would spend just focusing on how to start a note, how to transition between a C and a D, how to, again, just play the instrument at the highest level. And at every moment of my classical study, we were not always focused on the theoretical aspects of the music. And what I mean by that is we were not talking about hey, Mozart is playing the 1 chord here. Now Mozart is going to the 5. And you could see that, over here at the beginning of the Mozart Clarinet Concerto, he was outlining a C major chord. And then now here at measure 3, he's playing down a G major arpeggio, right? We don't really spend as much time focusing about the musical happenings and the musical theory about a composition. When we are studying a classical piece of music, we are talking about the articulations. We're talking about the transitions between notes. We're talking about the dynamics. Again, how do I bring this piece of music to life? How do I give it humanity? Classical musicians used to improvise. Bach was renowned as a great improviser. And I guess over the last 100 years or so, the improvisational aspect of classical music has been removed from the pedagogy. And now classical music is purely focused on the how of music, right? Playing music that someone else composed for you and understanding how do I play this music at the highest level possible. Hey y'all, I just wanted to cut away one last time and add that classical musicians are expected to perform music flawlessly each and every time. So there's a heavy emphasis in consistency, developing reliability and consistency on your instrument. You need to perform the music exactly as written, no matter how technically demanding it is. perfectly each and every time you perform. So I just want to say that's another emphasis in the training of a classical musician. All right, back to the video. With all that being said, I think there are a lot of aspects about both sides of that training that are very important to creating a well-rounded musician. As a jazz musician, we can benefit from a classical training in the sense that we can spend more time understanding the history of our instrument and the technical lineage of how to play it from a more technical perspective. How do I hold the instrument correctly? How do I produce a more consistent airflow? How do I transition between notes more seamlessly? How do I place my tongue? How do I remove my tongue? All of that study of the instrument, the how do I do things on the instrument, it's extremely important and ultimately can allow you greater facility on your instrument. So I think as a jazz musician, we can really benefit from more of the standardization that classical music has produced. As a classical musician, I think we can benefit greatly from understanding more about the what am I playing and why am I playing it. And I think it's interesting that with a lot of classical musicians, as soon as you remove the sheet music, they are completely unable to play anything. They have no idea how to create music, and it becomes very scary to create music. And that kind of like leads me to this other question is like, so when Beethoven was composing, do you think that Beethoven wrote the notes down on the page, then heard the music? Or do you think that Beethoven heard the music in his head and then wrote it down? So the question is, does music exist if it's not written down? And in my opinion, writing down sheet music, it's just a way of transferring ideas to other people. So I think on some level, we need to embrace musicianship. We have to embrace that we are creators of music. And just because you can play the clarinet, does that make you a musician? Or does that just make you a clarinet player? That's a deep question to ponder. What happens when I take the sheet music away from you? Can you still create music? Are you still able to be a musician? So that is an important skill to also develop. You are a creative person and you have the ability to create music even without a sheet of music in front of you. I think the biggest differences between jazz and classical music is that a jazz musician is asking themselves, what do I play and why do I play it? A classical musician is more focused on how do I play this and how do I bring this piece to life? So once again, I want to say that I don't feel that any skill set is necessarily better or worse, but each skill set is designed to make you function within an idiom of music that has different techniques and different standards of operation. So we can learn something from both styles. We can learn a lot from the jazz idiom. We can learn a lot from the classical idiom. And ultimately, performing either one of these styles of music at the highest level is extremely difficult and requires an enormous level of musicianship. Those are some things that were on my mind. And the reason I wanted to make this video is if you are a jazz musician trying to play classical music, I'm hoping that my experience and my thoughts will help you understand the style of music a little bit better. If you are a classical musician learning how to play jazz, I hope that, again, my thoughts and insights will help you approach jazz music from a different perspective. The training that you've received as a classical musician is incredibly important and it's a great skill set to have. However, to be an improvising musician, you need to develop a different set of skills that are, again, based on the techniques that you've learned as a classical musician, however, are more focused on the compositional aspects of the music. Please don't ever say good enough for jazz or refer to, classical music as legit music. I don't like those terms, and I don't think that you're doing yourself any mental favors by putting one style of music on a pedestal compared to the other one. Because if it's good enough for jazz, then all of a sudden jazz can be just whatever you want it to be. So once again, the most important thing is that we're musicians and we should always be striving to create music at the highest level. Music is about connection, and it's about connecting with people. It's about connecting with ourselves, and it's about connecting with the past, present, and future. So when we're creating music, we're creating connections. And there are only two styles of music: good music and bad music. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I'm really interested to hear what your thoughts and feelings are. If you like what I said, please leave a comment. If you think what I said was completely ridiculous and you hate it, please leave a comment. I want to know what you think. And anyways, y'all, thank you so much for watching. My name is Gregory Agid, and I will catch you all next time. Peace.